I wanted to be able to share my story in the hope that it actually gave somebody else some insight into their own situation or some tools to be able to start to move forward on their own personal journey. So that was very much the inspiration for me sharing my own personal transformation over this last 12 months. And in sharing all of that here on the podcast, I hope that that inspires you to be able to navigate and explore some of your own personal opportunities to really engage in the work that you love doing. Welcome to Work Life by Design. I'm your host, Mel Marsden, a podcast exploring the dynamics of what it takes to thrive, not just at work, but in life. Hello, and thank you for joining me for another season of Work Life by Design. So this is the wrap up for season 7. We have been exploring all the things that have been on my heart and mind this season. This season was inspired by the beautiful Brené Brown and one of her previous seasons. And I thought, what a fantastic idea. What a way to just kind of explore all of the things that have been taking up space in my head and in my heart and sharing them with you, my beautiful audience, to hear what's going on, hear what's happening in my life, hear what's happening in the lives of my clients, the stories, the experiences that they're getting to share, the questions that they're asking, the things that I'm learning, and being able to share all of that beautifully with you. So this season has very much been a lot about my own personal journey of transformation over these last sort of 12 months. And it's not often that I think that we speak about these things because they are things that don't often get spoken about. We don't like to share these things. And for me, I think that statement about it's much easier to share from a scar than it is from a wound is extremely true. Like these last 12 months, there's no way that I could have jumped on here and shared my story with you because I was still very much in the thick of it. I didn't have any of the lessons or the learnings to be able to share with you at that time. I could only share with you the experience that I was in. And I don't think that personally that's very helpful for anybody. I particularly like to be able to come and share with you after the fact and go, this is what I learned. This is how I have got myself through this. These are the steps that I took. And I hope that this season has resonated in that way. That was very much my intention of sharing from that point. And I share because I know that when I have had these conversations with people in real life, that they have resonated and that I have been asked to then share that story because it isn't something that we often speak about. We do sort of tend to suffer these things in silence, and I wanted to change that. I wanted to be able to share my story in the hope that it actually gave somebody else some insight into their own situation or some tools to be able to start to move forward on their own personal journey. So that was very much the inspiration for me sharing my own personal transformation over this last 12 months, and then bringing on some of the guests that I did as well to sort of provide further depth to those experiences, to provide some more insight into why we might be that. And I'll dive into a bit more of that today when we do a bit of a recap over the various episodes that we've explored this particular season, because it has been a really interesting one and I've absolutely loved a lot of it. We've been able to bring on a lot of my mentors and my guides who've been able to share their stories and experiences, but I've also been able to bring in a lot of experts around different aspects of how we can create better work lives, because as the name of this podcast suggests, it is work life by design and it's all about work and life. These two things are not separate. They are very much intertwined. We've talked about it for a long time now, bringing our whole selves to work, and we need our workplaces to be places that we feel very comfortable that we can do that, but we also need to be in a place where we can take action on a personal level as well to design the work life that we actually want to create. And that's very much what I'm about. And that's why I'm here sharing this with you over this last season as well. And the reason I did that as well, because I do find the crossover between what I'm seeing in my business coaching with my clients there and predominantly coaching female business leaders in designing a work life and a business that works for them and their lifestyle that they want to create, but also in the world of the corporates that I work with as well and creating their next workplaces. There is this intersection and this overlapping of experiences. And despite the fact that, one may be a solo entrepreneur and the other may be leading a 6,000 employee business, whilst there's very different scales of complexity of problems, there's still a lot of similarities in those problems, because at the end of the day, we are all still people. and we are all still leading people, and we all still have very human experiences of life and of work. And there's a lot of that I find there's a lot of consistency in and a lot of overlap. And so that's why also I find that this season has been really interesting for me personally, because I've seen the intertwining and the interconnectivity of some of these conversations that are happening that are very much on that personal level, but how that can actually be quite impactful on the way that we are working with and engaging with our people within our businesses. And really, this is the work that I absolutely love to do. I love working with people to create better workplaces, better environments, better businesses, where people absolutely love going to work. That was my whole passion in starting Community 12 years ago, was to help people love where they work. And as we've continued to evolve over those 12 years, I feel like we're absolutely getting to the crux of it. And me personally, with the way that I've been able to expand my own service offerings and become multi-passionate and delivering all of the things that I do, I'm absolutely getting to live some of those dreams that I set out for myself as a reality. And in sharing all of that here on the podcast, I hope that that inspires you to be able to navigate and explore some of your own personal opportunities to really engage in the work that you love doing. So whether it's about you as the leader of your business or your team, or it's about encouraging and enabling your employees to really show up each day at work, that's what really I love doing. It's like helping you guys create work that works for you. That is what the crux of this is all about. Now, I shared with you back in my very first episode for the season that my word for this year is mastery. Now, mastery to me is not about creating excellence or seeking perfection. It's really much more about the practice. It's about the journey of becoming who I want to become. It's about being a student of life, a student in every aspect. It's coming with each day with curiosity, with openness, and a real willingness to learn. Because I think as people, we need to be forever growing, we need to be developing, we need to be changing. And that word mastery really, to me, encompasses that. I've been on, as you know, this very exploratory journey over the last 12 months, and having that word for my anchor this year has continued to enable to remind me that it isn't about seeking perfection. It's not about the end game. It's about the journey. It's about who I'm becoming on the way to getting there. And this word has been an absolutely powerful reminder for me this year already to date of just the person that I want to be, because it really becomes a daily practice of checking in and going, am I actually on the right path? Am I still making the decisions in the right way that are going to lead me to where I want to be? Am I still bringing that openness, that curiosity, that desire for learning to each and every day? And I feel like that helps me create that sense of reminder. So if you haven't created a word for yourself this year, I highly recommend doing it. Use it as something that sets some guardrails for you. It's a point of reflection. So every time you're faced with a difficult decision or a conversation, just think about what your word is for the year and is it moving you closer in that direction. Now, as I've mentioned, I also shared my own health journey in episode 2 of the season. And so much of that has got to do with who you choose to be. And I think that word mastery has also enabled me to then have that point of anchor going back, well, who am I actually choosing to be? Because everything that we do is a choice. We can change those choices. We can choose to do something different. We can choose a different action. And whilst I also believe that a lot of what we experience is deeply seated in our wiring, in our nervous system, there are steps that we can take to shift and release what is stuck in our nervous systems, to rewire it and to change our situations. But at the beginning of it, it all starts with choice. And this is all about a deeper conversation that I had with one of our guests during the season, Philippa Billette from Chris and Philly. Now, Philly has been one of those people that has been instrumental in my own personal health journey. She has guided me through this. She is a functional medicine practitioner, and she just doesn't deal with the functional medicine piece on her own. She's far more holistic than that. And she looks at a lot more of what's going on behind the scenes as to why we end up the way that we do particularly when we're dealing with body burnout. What is some of those more underlying root causes? Yes, there's the functional side of things. It's the way your body systems are operating, where you've got, depletions within your system, and what we can do from a supplements perspective and a nutritional perspective and a body movement, all of the physical health aspects of it. But what she also looks at is what she describes as the metaphysical side of things as well. It's like, what are the programming, the wiring, the stories, the belief systems that we are running that are leading us to be in this body burnout situation as it is. And Philly has completely changed my perspective on so many things and how much we hold and we reserve and we store in our bodies, and how much our thoughts actually influence our behavior, and therefore how we show up, how we speak to ourselves, the choices that we make, and what that's doing to our own physical health. So we really dove deep into that conversation in this episode with Philly around, well, what is really body burnout? What does it look like? What are the symptoms? What could I be experiencing? How do I know that body burnout is something that I'm experiencing or I'm on the verge of, or seeing it in somebody else as well, observing that and recognizing it in other people. We talk about why traditional medicine also misses a lot of the root causes. I know on my own personal journey, I was going to the doctor, I was getting tests done, they're going, everything keeps coming back normal. But we dive into why that is and how through these processes we start to look at our body systems and our body functioning differently and also far more holistically. We dive into why those beliefs are keeping us stuck and what real healing actually looks like. So I love this episode with Philly. She talks about her own personal journey with body burnout, what led her into, really getting so deeply involved in this and helping so many other people to experience that as well. So I highly recommend that one for a listen. I also had the pleasure of inviting the lovely Amber Hawken to join me here as well. Now, Amber has been a coach and a mentor and a friend of mine for a number of years now, and she really helps me to explore, I describe it as more the ethereal side of my nature. So that more spiritual connection, looking at things from a different perspective, less logically, far more emotionally, and reconnecting in with our bodies. And as you may also have heard from previous episodes, I've been doing my meditation practitioner training. That was through her program ISOMA with her partner, Kurt. And we talk about that in the episode as well and what it actually is, because when I started that program to when I finished it, and now I am accredited in my meditation practitioner training, it's so much more than I expected. It's not being able to sit on a mat and, cross your legs and hold your fingers in a particular way and hum. Meditation has so many different ways that it can be applied in general everyday life. And it really is more a practice of presence and a practice of contact and contact with yourself. And that's holding that contact with yourself, being able to hold that contact with somebody else, being truly present in the presence of another person. And so we talk about that in the episode as well. But one of Amber's really big passionate drives is around this reconnection to community. And as the name of my business suggests, community, this is something that I'm deeply passionate about as well. It's about creating places where people feel connected to community. And there are so many aspects to making that happen and making that a realistic in our world. And the conversation that I go into with Amber, we start to look at, well, how does this show up in leadership? What is the importance of rituals, of ceremony in creating community, and how over generations we've lost that connection? If we look back at our ancestors, the way that they used to sit in community, that they used to sit in ceremony, the power of ritual, the roles and rites of passage that we used to transition through, and those marking of different milestones in our evolution of our lives. All of these things are aspects that Amber really delves into, and how nature actually connects into that too, and how we've lost our connection to nature and the cyclical nature of living and what that is doing to our physiological systems as well, and how that's impacting our behavior and our connection out in society. And so we talk about all of these different aspects, but what's really fascinating about this is how we can actually take this back as leaders and we can apply this back into our own organizations and the impact that this can make in transforming our businesses. I think there's some real opportunities in that as well. Now, while this season has really been quite focused on expanding ourselves and our own capacity to experience life in a fuller, more joyful and, in many ways, a very much more healed way, it's also been about exploring how this connects into our work lives and our workplaces. Much of the work that I do with community is creating great new work environments for people to thrive in at work. That's what we're all about. It's about optimizing our workplaces and enhancing our employee experiences. And so we can't do that without first looking at the people that are going to be occupying these spaces. So whilst at times some of these conversations may have seemed very isolated and individualized, they are just as important to creating great workplaces, because at the end of the day, our workplaces are for people. They are not facilities assets. They are not property projects. They are about people. And so what I wanted to do with this season is bring and intertwine so many of these different aspects to the conversation and draw them back into how does this actually connect with people? And so one conversation that I have been having within workplaces quite a lot is around understanding, how does neurodiversity show up and how do we create a workplace that supports neurodiversity in a really positive way, in the way that we're building and creating our workplaces? So we go through and we have these conversations, we get to a point with a client and then they're going, okay, we're having some resistance from within the organization. Certain people are identifying as neurodiverse. What are we doing from a physical built form here to support their needs? So I thought, what better way to kind of put some framework and some conversation around this than to invite the beautiful Marianne Power to join me on the podcast and discuss this. Now, Marianne is a clinical psychologist. She's also a neurodiversity specialist. She works with neurodiverse leaders and she coaches within organizations as well to really embrace neuro inclusion in our workplaces and how we can create supportive environments to do that. And so this conversation was really about how we can create an environment and how we can actually support leaders with greater clarity and understanding around what neurodiversity is and how the natural diversity of all our brains shows up in the workplace and how we should be really embracing it. So during this conversation, we talked about universal design, the fact that there really is no one size fits all, and how when we design for many, we are actually creating a much better workplace for our people. The power of flexibility. We've been talking about this for years now, thanks to our mate COVID. It's flexibility, because we all work differently, and flexibility is a big part of supporting people who need that diversity in their work life. But it's also about creating really great open communication, having the ability to co-create a workplace with your people, to really engage them in that conversation, to understand what their needs are, and then how we can create a workplace around that. So this is a really insightful conversation. It's one that I'm going to be sharing with a lot of my clients when we start to touch onto these conversations, because it really gets deep into what it is to create a workplace that is supporting not just the neurotypical, but everybody, and how that is actually creating a much better business within our organizations. Now, we also took a step into looking at one of our previous projects, and that was with Northrop. Now, I invited the Greater Sydney leader, Stephen Fryer, to come and join me on the podcast. So Stephen led the charge on this particular project. So this, as I said, was for Northrop. They are a consulting engineering firm based in Sydney, and they have offices nationally. But Stephen took the charge on this particular project, and he really wanted to create a workplace that was going to empower their people, really use it as a step change in how they were showing up. And he identified that their teams were starting to get a little bit stagnant, and that this could be a really great opportunity to kind of revitalize the organization, bring a lot more energy back into it, and really engage with the wider workforce, the leadership team, to bring them on this journey and use it as a catalyst for transformational change within their organization. And he absolutely succeeded in this. This conversation really started to focus on how Stephen maximised their investment. And when I talk about maximising their investment, I'm not just talking about getting the best deal from it commercially in terms of the amount of space that they were getting or the incentive deal, while that was actually a very big part of this conversation as well. It was more about how he could leverage this particular opportunity to create that cultural transformation. Because as I say time and time again, your next workplace is not a construction project. It may start out that way. It might be, my lease is expiring and I need to build a new workplace. Great. That ticks the box for construction project. But it's not about building a workplace. It is about building a new environment that enables the culture and the business success for your organization. And that is exactly what Stephen did in this project. And he's reaping the benefits of it now. He used this project as a catalyst for change. And so during this conversation, we talk about how he has created a workplace that people actually want to come to. Amazing. He doesn't need mandates. He's not enforcing people back to the office. They are naturally wanting to come in and spend time in this environment with each other, with their colleagues. So we dive into how he has managed to do that. We talk about how he used communication tools in the form of mascots to engage the team. So we did some pretty cool things with the team at Northrop. And it's fantastic to see how what started as this little idea has grown and took on a life of its own within their business. So we talk about that as well. But also we talk about the power of inclusive leadership. So with this particular project, we engaged with everybody and we invited people from various different levels of the organisation to take ownership in different ways to contribute to the creation of this next workplace and also the moving forward of their culture. And it's just fascinating to hear how some of the ideas that we introduced to Northrop were taken and given legs and how that expanded out into the wider business. So it was just a beautiful conversation to really hear how a workplace can completely transform the culture of their organisation and how Stephen just absolutely nailed taking this through that particular journey. We talked about neurodiversity in that particular conversation as well, because with engineers, there's a very high proportion of their team that are neurodiverse and what that meant. And one of the things that we talked about in that was about how we can create spaces for the team to really be able to focus, to do that deep work, to get into that really concentrative state without distraction. And that brings me to my next guest that we had on, which was the lovely Angela Lockwood. Angela is an occupational therapist. She's a speaker. She's an author. She's a coach. And she's also developed the focus formula. Now, it's about really supporting each of us to take control of our attention, to be able to tune out the noise, to focus on what really matters, because we have lots of distractions. We've got a huge amount of competing demands as leaders. There's so many things going on around us, and it's about how do we actually prioritize what's important? What do we actually need to focus on? How do we ensure that we can then deliver on those things? And we talk about in this conversation how it's just about reclaiming your focus and how you can start to expand your energy, which Ange also starts to explain is why energy management is far more important and far more valuable than just time management. And we dive into that in this conversation. But also one other thing that I really love, and this again speaks to my kind of more feminine-led business direction that I like to head in, is about our intuition. Now, I think personally, this is my view, is that in business, we have started to shy away from intuition. It's been described as emotional or, not logical. But Ange actually talks about it in a very biological way, how connecting in with our intuition is a power, a skill set that we have shied away from that is really powerful in business, and how it's become really underrated and how we can start to re-access ours. So love that conversation with Ange as well. It was beautiful, talking about how we can really get focus, because focus isn't what you always think too. Like, you might think that you're just being distracted by your technology and the dings and pings. There's a lot more to it. So highly recommend tuning into that one to take away some really practical, actionable strategies that you can employ in your daily habits to create more focus and build greater energy management in your day. Now, my final guest, which I've saved the best for last, was Dr. Meg Hooper. Now, this conversation was a bit of a meandering one, very philosophical, as the conversations that Meg and I like to have. It started as a sort of a book review in a way of the book Phosphorescence by the beautiful Julia Baird. Now, I love this book. Meg actually recommended this book to me after I had tuned into a podcast and I was going on a rant about this particular podcast to her, and she's going, you need to read this book. And I devoured it. And this book has actually become so much more for me. I've embedded it into client projects. I've taken the word phosphorescence as one of my intentions for the year. And the subtitle of the book is about finding awe and wonder in the world around us when things aren't always going the way that we want them to, when the world goes dark. And this conversation ended up being a bit more of a reflection on our own lives and our own careers as Meg and I have transitioned as we've got into wiser older ladies, and how we may not have taken as much from this particular book as we would have in our earlier years, and just the wisdom that comes with age in some ways. But in this conversation, we really explored some of the key themes of the book, which is really around how we can sustain that own inner light, our own phosphorescence, when things aren't great, when we're losing, when things are going dark. And Julia's own personal story is that she is a survivor of breast cancer and she's fought it multiple times. But it was about how she has sought out awe and sought out wonder, and the research and the studies that sit behind that to really, I suppose, communicate and justify why that makes such a difference in our lives. And some of the things that particularly stood out for me is around nature. I've already sort of talked about it earlier in the conversations with Amber as well, but our connection to nature and the biological responses that happen in our body and how it improves our well-being, it improves our physical health, it improves our ability to concentrate, so therefore it's improving our performance. There's a huge wealth of research that sits around the way that nature is contributing to the betterment of our lives. And there's a phrase that's being shared now, it's called nature deprivation, and how that is impacting our lives and our well-being. And so, we talk about that. We also talk about how that then translates into creating greener cities and the introduction of biophilia and greenscapes and landscaping within our buildings and within our communities as well, and the impact that that's having on our health. But we also dive into some practices that you can really start to engage with to nurture your own inner light. How can you nurture that inner light, build on it, build that resilience, so when things aren't going as well as they could or as well as you would like them to be, you've got that own internal reserve to draw on, and how you can access that and bring that to the forefront. So the final thing that we talk about then is why wonder and awe are really essential parts of self-care. And we probably don't often think about it in that way. So highly recommend tuning in and understanding what it is that we're actually talking about there. So look, I have absolutely loved creating this season for you, and I really hope that these conversations have resonated, they've supported you, they've inspired you to maybe choose something a little bit different for your future self as kind of thank you for either your work or your life. And, as I said earlier, they're really one and the same. We can't extract them. I think we used to try and think that we could, that work was one thing and life was something else. But the reality is that these two things are so deeply intertwined. And I've really enjoyed this season because it's been an opportunity to really, I suppose, demonstrate how those two aspects of us are really connected and are intertwining. So if this season has connected with you and you'd like to explore more, there's a few ways that you can do this. So if you're really looking to reconnect with yourself, to reconnect with nature, to refill your tank and to realign with your life, my Exhale retreat that's happening in October would be perfect for you. This is a retreat for women. It is an opportunity to take some time out, to be taken care of, to reconnect with yourself, to immerse yourself in nature. I'm hosting it in the beautiful Tweed Valley hinterland. We have a gorgeous property that we'll be staying on. There's a beautiful creek. There's rock pools that you can swim in. There's nature walks that you can go on. It's about really immersing yourself in nature, and by doing so, really reconnecting back with yourself, taking that moment to just exhale, to let out that breath that you have been holding and carrying for so long. And the reason that I'm hosting this for women is because, one, this is something that I wish I had when I was starting on my healing journey, because it just is a melting pot of some of the conversations I've had, the healers that I've been supported by, the mentors, the coaches, the guides, the people that have contributed to my own healing journey, but also the practices that have supported that as well. So there'll be light, gentle movement. So we've got a beautiful yoga instructor coming to guide us through some yoga in the mornings. There will be meditation sessions so that you can still your mind and quieten yourself down and really start to listen to what your own internal system, your own heart is trying to tell you. We'll have some sound bathing as well. So I'll be putting you off to a beautiful sleep with a lullaby from our beautiful crystal healing bowls as well. There'll be conversations around cyclical living as women and how we've become so disconnected from our own systems and what the opportunities are there for us to reconnect, but also how, when doing so, we can start to limit the impact that it's having on our bodies and not end up with adrenal fatigue and burnout, and what some of those early signs are and how we can start to put systems in place to support us. We'll be having a breathwork exercise as well. We'll be doing a lot of open time so that you can just be there to experience, to have conversations with the other women that are going to be there, to start to think about, well, what is it that I really want from my life and my business, and how I can start to realign that. So if this is something that is resonating with you, drop into the show notes. There will be a link there. It's called Exhale, the retreat. It's happening on October the 23rd to the 26th in the Tweed Valley. And I would love to hold this space for you, because I think it is something that as women, we're juggling so many priorities, so many needs, so many things, and we've just pushed so much of ourselves aside. And this is going to be an opportunity for you to reconnect and just kind of let it all go. So I'm absolutely loving that and planning this for you. And I can't wait to see you there. So please drop into the show notes, click on the link and head through. If you have any questions, book in a call with me. I'd love to have a chat and talk to you more about it. But I'm very excited about that. If you're thinking that sounds incredible, but I really need something right now and I want more tailored eyes on my life, on my business, then my one-on-one coaching is for you. So through this process, we will dive deep into where you're at, what's going on, and where you desire to be. And you might not know where you desire to be, and you might know that things aren't just great where they are right now. That's fine. We'll meet you exactly where you are. We'll work it out together and we'll create a plan of attack to shift the needle forward for you. So these one-on-one coaching sessions are extremely bespoke. I do not have a prescribed formula. We work with what it is that's challenging you and where you want to go. And it's both across your business and your life, because as I said, and I'll say it again, creating a business and running a really high-performing, sustainable business that you love and enjoy means that we first need to start with you. What is the life that you want to live? And how do we then create a business that supports that lifestyle? And that is what I'm all about, because for the last 20 years, I have been trying to figure it out myself, and I am taking steps, incremental steps in the right direction. And I want to share with you the tools and the resources that I have gathered to support you to create that opportunity for yourselves as well. So that's there as an offer as well. If you were interested in the one-on-one coaching, again, head over to my website. There's a link there. You can do it. Go to Work With Me, Work Life, and you will find some information there on how you can start to connect with me around that one-on-one coaching. And finally, if your workplace is in need of some of this magic, you're ready to engage your team in new ways of working, you want to transform your culture, or you're ready to create your next workplace. Your lease is expiring, you're all excited, you've got that opportunity on the horizon to just go and create an amazing new workplace that's going to support your business, your people, your culture, your strategic objectives, then get in touch. The team at Community and I would absolutely love to support you in creating your next environment, and how that's going to absolutely transform the culture of your organization and lead to so many more rewards. As you have heard from Stephen at Northrop, these really once in a career opportunity for many of us as leaders to influence the shape of a space. But also as a business, this opportunity comes around every 10 years if you're lucky, and most organizations will renew their leases. So you might be looking at 15 years before you get to do this again. And 15 years is a very long time in business, and a lot changes. So we want to be as forward thinking as we possibly can to make sure that we're making the most of this opportunity. So if that is something of interest as well, please do get in touch. Again, head to my website, go to Work With Me, and head to Workspace. And there's a form at the bottom there you can fill out to connect with me. But if all else fails, send me an email. My email address is melissa@community, and community is spelled COMUNITI.com.au. Again, all of this will be in the show notes. But that's it for this season. I have absolutely loved bringing you this season, and I hope that it has resonated. If it has, please share it. Leave me a review. The more people that know about this podcast, the more impact we can make in creating better work lives throughout the world, which would be incredible, because this isn't just, isolated to where we're here in Australia. This is a conversation that needs to be happening globally. If you want more, while the season has ended, there are 157 episodes that you can go back and you can tune into on all things life and work. But if you are ready for more, you can come over, connect with me on LinkedIn, just at Melissa Marsden. I'm also on Instagram at Melmar, or you can send me an email, as I said, at melissa@community.com.au. But that's it for season 7. Thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to joining you again next season.